Welcome to the epicenter of sports and entertainment. This is The Rude Dog Show. Now, here's your host, Rudy Reyes.
Look, a little late, better than not at all, I would suspect. This is Rudy Reyes on The Rude Dog Show, live on Twitter, Facebook. I tried LinkedIn, didn't quite work out. YouTube. And, of course, you guys can throw me an at Rude Dog Reyes here on Twitter. I appreciate you tuning in. This is the Rude Dog Show live on Coachella Valley. If you don't know what that is, go to Twitter. You'll know exactly where I'm tweeting from and video live is from. Did I mention live on YouTube? I thought I did, but if I didn't, I'm live on YouTube as well. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Love the conversation. Love the enthusiasm everybody seems to be feeling, especially on a Tuesday. If your team won, and we're talking Monday night, and we're talking Sunday all day, including Sunday Night Football. There's a lot of things to like in week one. More importantly, I think it was about the things that we didn't like in week one. A lot of the teams that we were slated, I was slated, and, look, I understand it's one game. I'm not overreacting, and neither should you. Even if my team had lost, it wouldn't matter. Wouldn't make any difference. It's one game. However, with that being said, there's a lot of things that I like and care for in regards to week one. And week one, we've seen so many different defenses. Do they still win championships? Is it something that we believe can actually end up winning a Super Bowl? And we can discuss how defenses, offenses win championships, and there can be a case made for both sides of the ball. Not a problem, not an issue. And we can have that conversation. But what I wanted to talk about was how offenses need to collect and achieve and show that they can perform solid plays and assemble those plays together that would enable their respective team to go down the field and win the game. I mean, that's the whole point of it, right? Is to win the game. And when we look at the doubt that's existed for a lot of players, and I could talk about Geno Smith, and I could be wrong about Geno Smith, and I could make the overall suggestion that I didn't have any faith in Geno Smith coming in. But to be honest, I really didn't. I didn't have any hope for Geno Smith whatsoever. And when I say that, I mean, I look at Geno Smith and I look at when he started. I remember when he was drafted out of West Virginia to the New York Jets. I thought to myself, okay, well, there's something good going on here. And I look at the overall, scheme of things when it comes to Geno Smith, their head coach, their situation offensively. Something wasn't going to add up. I don't know what it was. I don't know who it was. I don't remember when it was. All I know is that one day Geno Smith was not starting quarterback for the New York Jets. And, of course, most quarterbacks that, again, as I mentioned in Cleveland, quarterbacks go to die in New York with the Jets as they do in Cleveland. Now, sadly, I say that very, very lightheartedly. And I say that only because I look at Geno Smith and I thought to myself, man, he didn't deserve to win that game yesterday. No, that's not true. He had every reason to get into that conversation in regards to what he can do against a very good Denver Broncos defense. I think it was just a matter of plays and that the Broncos were outplayed. And I think that field goal at the end, obviously, Coach Driscoll is being roasted right now in a lot of different outlets, and maybe hindsight being 2020, he probably wouldn't have gone for it over 60 plus yards with McManus kicking that ball through. Now, they said they were comfortable with the decision, and they were more importantly ready to make that move, and they actually did. Hindsight being 2020, I think when you look at who and when and what and how they were going to keep the ball in Russell Wilson's hands, I don't think that it was an overall decision in regards to, well, why wouldn't it? Why would you not put the ball in the hands of someone that, A, is your centerpiece, has been duly noted for quite a few times, and secondly, a guy who's already won a Super Bowl, a guy who has created many more fourth quarter drives than any other quarterback in NFL history. And sadly, I think to myself, man, why would you not leave the ball in Russell Wilson's hands? Offensive line needs some help. in regards to handling those individual assignments, being able to effectively block the pathways to get to Russell Wilson by opposing defenses. Now, again, this is one game. I'm not going to sit here and say that, well, you know what, it's the end of the world and it's going to fall off the planet and Russell Wilson is no longer going to be the starter and ... It's not going to happen that way. And again, this is one game. This is not something that we need to kind of drive into the ground. But more importantly, I think it has to do with recognizing, and hindsight being 2020, for Coach Hackett, he has to look at this very carefully and very critically to suggest that, well, we can't do this again. We cannot find ourselves in this position to win the game and kicking a field goal that he may or may not have, and maybe it could just be word of mouth, allowing McManus to kick that field goal 60 plus yards when he was ready to kick it for 61 yards and not 61 plus yards. So a lot of questions surrounding last night's game. I thought Geno Smith, and again, he proved me wrong. I did not believe whatsoever Geno Smith was going to be able to take that rollover as the starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks and actually make something out of this. This is the worst part of all, is that not only was I wrong, but he played lights out. I mean, he threw the ball where he needed to. He didn't turn the ball over. He managed the game very, very well. He went down to win the game. He did it in quite a few occasions. There were some 3-and-outs, but that's what you would expect, right? A lot of bang plays for the Denver Broncos. A lot of bang plays for Seattle. They were hitting hard out there. I mean, I had not seen Seattle lower that kind of boom since the Legion of Boom in Seattle just a few years ago. And I think more importantly, when you look at the Seattle Seahawks, it was a big question going into, the upcoming seasons. Geno Smith going to be the quarterback. Is Drew Lock going to be the quarterback? I think Drew Lock ended up getting roasted by another team altogether, or excuse me, an analyst. Now, with that being said, defense for the Broncos was on point. I think they did extremely well, but they ran out of time and ultimately did not leave the ball in the hands of the guys that they paid, double-digit, millions of dollars throughout, 5 years, I believe. So he's going to be there a long time. I don't want this to turn into a problem. I don't think the Broncos want to turn into a problem, and I think they'll make those corrections. I don't believe this is going to be a long way to next to nothingness in regards to making those corrections and making them stick headed into the remainder of the week. Now, the remainder of the entire season. Again, it's one game. I'm not crying wolf. I'm not going to say Seattle's going down the tubes or Denver's going to flail and flop around like a dead fish and, he's not going to have the opportunities. He's going to have plenty of opportunities. But then so is Hackett. Hackett's going to have opportunities to not put players like Russell Wilson in those types of situations. McManus, not in situations like that as well. So there's a lot of things to like about the Denver Broncos. They look very, very different, but eerily similar to Seattle offense while Russ Wilson was in Seattle. So very interesting game last night. Lost by 1 point. Nothing that the Denver Broncos should really hang their heads about. But I think situationally by Coach Hackett, you just leave the ball in the hands of Russell Wilson. Brought to you by California Today. Go to California Today. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook, YouTube. I tried LinkedIn, but it didn't quite work out. I guess, after all, it is on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn as well, as I just checked my monitor. So thanks for tuning in. I appreciate any questions, comments, anything at all whatsoever. The Steelers won absolutely monstrous. Thank you, Precious. I appreciate that. And I don't know Sharafuddin Imami. I don't know the message, but thank you nonetheless. I appreciate the message. Maybe not a full message, but a message nonetheless. So thank you for that one. I'm humbled that you guys would actually take the time to watch today and or this afternoon for that matter. I want to dive into a game that was a little bit more defensive, not offensive, but defensive. And don't take offense to this, but it's really going to boil down to where it all happened, and that was in social media. You could pick your poison. Obviously, we had seen this early in week one in regards to defensive plays. One tie in the NFL, and I'll challenge you to remember which teams they were that actually tied. So if you have that answer, feel free to post it and comment on it as well. One team stands out this week to me defensively, and it has to be the Steelers. Total of 5 takeaways combined. And it was an early onset of what I believe the Bengals were referring to when they said stealing. Now, when they said stealing, I wasn't quite sure why they would even troll Pittsburgh on social media for whatever reason. It wasn't at Steelers. It was more just a general term of what are they stealing? Well, clearly we know what happened in that game and who the game was stolen from, and it was the Bengals. The Steelers replied to them with a football emoji, which I thought was hilarious, at least from the onset. And maybe it's going to trend relatively well, especially on social media. And it's a blunder by the Bengals' social media to taunt a team who, in fact, if you remember last year, were swept by Cincinnati. And we can go along those lines and ask, what were they thinking? What were they possibly doing? Where were they going to go with any of this? Was it going to matter at the end of the day? I think it less mattered to the Bengals than it did the Steelers. Interestingly enough, I just thought it was hilarious. And of course, then after a closer review and post-game, I went and looked back at it just one more time, and I kind of chuckled, and I thought to myself, man, if there was a flag that could have been thrown for penalty for taunting, the Bengals would have been on the clock for that taunting penalty of 15 yards before the game ever started. All joking aside, perhaps this was shared, with the team prior, especially to the defense, because they're the ones who would steal the ball, essentially. But to prove exactly what they were stealing, how often they would steal it, and more importantly, you'd probably need to go back and ask Joe Burrow about his feelings of being picked 4 out of 5 times during Sunday's game. Now, Sunday was my birthday, and I just spent the day watching football. I know everybody else out there doing their doing their partying and whatnot. But for me, it was really about watching to see who this Steelers team really is. And of course, lots of other teams throughout the NFL landscape. I'm not going to smite the Bengals for this inadvertent game-winning guarantee of sorts. It's not as if we're watching Joe Namath walk off and say, I guarantee you victory. I guarantee you win. No, it didn't quite happen that way. And I think more importantly, it was overall unnecessary. And look, social media is one of those monsters that will swallow you up and spit you out if you let it. If you say the wrong thing, if you get in light of social media, you will be just crucified for so many different things, misspellings, typos, grammar police are enforced, etc. and so forth. Now, with that, the Steelers tied a ribbon around this one as they had the automatic Boz at the helm, as I'd like to call him. And it would be game-winning field goal attempt, but it was not meant to be. We had seen, if you go back a little bit further in the game, you've seen that Otto McPherson had his kick blocked, a field goal attempt by Minkah Fitzpatrick. Now, Minkah Fitzpatrick predominantly does not play on special teams. Once in a while, he'll play because he's just a playmaker, and he is all over the place. As a matter of fact, he was the first one responsible for a turnover, a cherry turnover, I must say, against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. And, of course, the first interception of the year by a guy that I had interviewed back in 2018 when he was drafted by the Miami Dolphins. So thank you, Minkah Fitzpatrick, for that wonderful birthday gift wrapped up in the end zone with my name on it. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. So ultimately, the next time around, Boz missed that field goal. Now, I think that was a lot to do with the fact alone that the relief holder had the laces that were in. Everybody remembers a Jim Carrey movie with the laces in versus the laces out, and there was a huge conversation. Just a very funny movie, and I remember that because it had to do with the Dolphins. And I think it was just had given the Steelers enough of what they needed to manage the clock, managed by Mitch Trubisky, to get down to that end of the field to really make something happen. And it was not meant to be put on the shoulders of one Mitchell Trubisky. However, he managed it well. And there was a touchdown, and he did play to win the game. Did he play monstrously? Did he scramble out of? No, we know who Mitch Trubisky is, but he showed exactly why he was named the starting quarterback for the Steelers. That's right, Ray Finkel. You're right, Greg. It's Ray Finkel. That's hilarious. I love that. I love the movie. The the Ray Finkel thing is absolutely hilarious. I love it. Uh, but this was not meant to be on the shoulders of other quarterbacks, not named Ben Roethlisberger, not named Tommy Maddox, not named Cordell Stewart, and the list goes on and on and on. This was primarily handed off to the defense to not only manage the game, but to take a win away from the AFC North winners or the runners-up of a Super Bowl last year against the Los Angeles Rams. Now, when you look at the numbers, yeah, he aged out. You're right. You're absolutely right. But at the end of the day, you got to know that Father Time is knocking and creeping at your door, and what's done is, well, done. And that means that you are done. And Ben Roethlisberger figured that out a little 2 years removed from being exited out of the NFL, but nonetheless, he did his absolute job when called upon, unless he was badly injured. Of course, he's been injured and riddled with injuries throughout his career. So the amount of yards favored Cincinnati, 432 yards. Pittsburgh did have the 5 turnovers. Of course, I wish McDonald's would actually get in on this. And for every turnover in the NFL, someone would get a free turnover to the drive-in. I'm just saying. Just saying. That's a possibility. I'm not going to call that out. But, yeah, the running game was relatively injured, Greg. And I think, with the plantar fascia that Najee Harris was faced with, Warren, who ultimately took over the starting duties for Najee Harris in that game, it was relatively stymied, but did enough to help win that game. Did enough to help move the chains along with the passing attack. Now, what's really interesting is that Cincinnati had 32 first downs. 32. The Steelers only had 13. But again, we're not talking about a quarterback by the Steelers designated to be that guy, to go out and throw, 40-yard plus bombs to open wide receivers. We know Chase Claypool was used from behind the line of scrimmage. We had seen this lovely, wonderful, fantastic tiny toe tap. And the drip from those were just all over the TV, from Deontay Johnson to Hurst. For the Bengals, it was just on display, man. These guys knew where the feet were, and they knew that the feet were sweet. And the tiny toe taps kept the chains moving deep. Game leaders, Mitch Trubisky had 21 out of 38, 194 yards and a touchdown. Joe Burrow, a little bit opposite end of the spectrum with 4 interceptions, 338 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then, of course, getting me all choked up here. These numbers just look way too good. Pat Freiermuth, 5 receptions, 79 yards. Jamar Chase, 10 receptions, 129 yards, and 1 touchdown. That's what I like to see out of a revamped Steelers offense. Offensive line still needs some work. They still need some help. I don't think anybody's in dispute of that. Everybody knows that. The writing is on the wall. Now, when you get into the minutia of this, when you look at the Steelers, they had 13 first downs. Bengals had 32. It's amazing. And 30, out of those 32, 22 were first downs in passing and 8 first downs in passing. So the majority of that was on the ground for first downs as you move the chains. And of course, the Steelers were 4-15, Bengals were 8-16. And then the Steelers were 21 for 38, or Mitch Trubisky, respectively. Bengals 33 for 53. So again, turnovers will kill you if not for McDonald's on the field. Those will kill you. Those will not make you feel very good. And you're not going to sleep well at night knowing what you can or could not have done any differently than what was witnessed on Sunday when the Steelers had taken on the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, next game up for Pittsburgh, they're going to be at Acrisure Stadium waiting for the New England Patriots, who, for all intents and purposes, are not the Patriots team that we have seen in the past with Mac Jones. Steelers are one of the teams that aren't going to travel a whole lot during the regular season. So whether or not that's an advantage remains to be seen. We're going to see what the playoffs look like as those approach. Now, special teams, as I stated, that swatted ball, that one counted. And then TJ Watt, there were multiple ways this could have gone with TJ Watt. It could have been a season-ending injury. I have some knowledge in regards to how long that would take, 6 to 8 weeks. Most people are erring on the side of less, at about 6 weeks. But for a complete heal with some minor and light working out, as well as light gameplay, maybe non-contact for TJ Watt, his feet are still good. He's just going to have to be careful of that shoulder and make sure that he ices that thing every night and he goes through the rehabilitation process in order to get back on the field in 6 weeks, because you just can't replace a guy like that. You just there's just no way. Last year's defensive player of the year in TJ Watt, you just don't. There's no way you can line up as many defensive tackles to offset. But Malik Reed will have his time up, especially during New England. And injury update on Najee Harris, who stated he's going to be ready for New England entering Acrisure on Sunday. Now, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit, because there was something that I had heard that just really, I don't know, it propelled me into just complete dismay. ESPN's own Greeny went on record stating that Rex Ryan was one of the best defensive coaches of all time. No, I got a problem with that. Not likely. Okay, so he was with the Ravens in 2000, 2001. Nothing really screams off the page with me at 10 to 6, and then 2001, and then 12-4 in 2000. And again, nothing really jumps off the page for me. But more importantly, I look at Rex Ryan and I think to myself, this is not possible. Okay, fine. So he had his day in the sun with the Baltimore Ravens. Great and wonderful. But over his 20 years of coaching, he was 164 and 156. Not very good. And during his career, with being a head coach for 8 seasons in the New York Jets system, he compiled a rate of 46 and 50. And he was fired on December 29th in 2014 as his next outing, as it were, was with the Bills from 2015 to 2016 and led the team to a 15-17 record. Again, nothing really screams out the page about Rex Ryan. He did have a good run. I can't say he had the best run, but he had a pretty decent run in regards to the teams that he was the defensive coordinator for. Baltimore Ravens 11-5 in 08, 07 5-11, 06 13-3, 6-10. The year prior 9-7, 10-6, 7-9, 10-6, 12-4. Again, in 1999 he was 8-8. So really, not a whole lot jumps off the page for me about Rex Ryan, and I don't know that Greeny had done enough research to suggest that Rex Ryan was. And you could have this argument as well to state that Rex Ryan is one of the best defensive coaches of all time. I think that was simply overstated and hyperbole. I don't believe that to be the case. There are a lot better coaches, multiple Super Bowl winning defensive coaches, guys who, for all that Rex is, he's not one of the best defensive coaches of all time. I wanted to just throw that out there because he just is not. With that being said, Rudy Reyes on the Rude Dog Show, live on Coachella Valley, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, at Rude Dog Reyes on Twitter. This episode will be posted on TheRudeDogShow.com. Make sure you check that out. I have all types of goodness going on that website right now, but I thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Everybody have a great night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.